Welcome, welcome, welcome. On behalf of Boston College and the Church in the 21st Century Center, I know many of you, but for those that don't know me, my name is Karen Kiefer, and I'm the Associate Director here at the C21 Center. So happy to be a part of this night and a part of the Women's Series. We actually started the Women's Series at the Center back in 2004. And it continued twice a year for, I think it was probably up until about 2011. And then it went on sabbatical. And then when Tom Groom became director of the center, he was like, where is the Women's Series? So it was resurrected. And this is actually the second program this year, which we're thrilled about. Many of you also know at the center that we have a theme that follows through the year, both semesters. This year it's conscience. So our first magazine in the fall was called Conscience at Work, and the second magazine is called Forming Conscience. For those of you that are not on our mailing list, please join. It's free. And the magazines are actually in the back of the room, and they're truly wonderful resources. And then, of course, our programming usually complements the theme. I also want to make note that we do have a third magazine in honor of Sister Maya. It's The Treasure of Hispanic Catholicism, and that came out last year. It's also wonderfully.
I don't think it was an honor, but that's good.
So how great that we can take a night and celebrate the jewels of the Catholic Church, the women religious. I know personally, aside from my parents, the Sisters of St. Joseph raised me, and I'm forever grateful. Yay. But a big yay to everyone. So anyway, Tom had reached out and connected with Sister Maya and extended this invitation, and we were hoping, praying that she would be able to come. And when she said yes, we were thrilled, and the fact that she can speak tonight about conscience and the role of women religious into the future is just, again, special. So thank you very much. I now have the great honor of introducing her. So, Sister Teresa Maya. She's a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of Charity. I know we have a number of Sisters of Charity here tonight in the Incarnate Word from San Antonio since 1994. Her ministry has been in education. She served as a teacher, a history professor, and an administrator. She has passion for the formation of ministers for Hispanic and Latinos in the United States. And Sister Teresa got her BA at Yale University, her MA at the Graduate Theological Union at Berkeley, and her PhD from the College of Mexico. She is currently serving as the congregational leader for her congregation as the president-elect of LCWR, which I've been told is about 45,000 sisters that are part of that group. So anyway, we are blessed, and let's give a warm welcome to Sister Maya.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank Tom and the center for the invitation. I want to tell you I wore green today, even though I'm a Spurs fan, because I knew I was going to be here in Boston. And I'm very excited to be back here, and I'm grateful that Boston College has this series and that they're looking to women religious. So I think it's important and significant that we're all here, and I'm very, very grateful for the invitation. I had a beautiful tour of Boston, courtesy of the Sisters of St. Joseph as well, so double thanks to them. When Tom called me about this series, and then he said I had to talk about conscience. I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to talk about. So I had this question, how is conscience of our current experience of religious life in the United States a privileged threshold for the future? How is our experience a place that will really tell a story about the future, not just of religious life, but of the Catholic Church and of the mission of Jesus. And so I'm having this deep thought when all I could remember was a story of a visit I had in Chile. And we sponsor a healthcare ministry that is now operating the hospital of the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile. And so the chancellor and the cardinal wanted to meet the sisters. So off we go to Santiago de Chile. And we're having dinner, and the chancellor and vice chancellor of the university tell me, well, religious life is on the way to extinction in the United States. And that's the first story that came into my mind as I was preparing this. And I said, I was so upset with him. You know, like, how dare you? We are about to begin a profound transformation, but not extinction. For sure, not extinction. So then I kept trying to think of, what are the images that come into my mind as I think of religious life in the United States? And then I'm sorry to say the second level of consciousness that I entered into had to do with movies. So, I started thinking, okay, so the nun story, maybe not, maybe we could be Maria. My favorite one is this one, of course. I grew up hoping I could fly one day, and then when I entered, there was no habit. Then, of course, there are more realistic films, and you've seen this one, Dead Man Walking, and then actually to meet the real nun in the story is even cooler. But then we have the series in, isn't that a great series? But then we also have the new kind of movies that are showing up. This is the Madeline Sisters. And then we have Philomena, a very balanced treatment, but yet, what are the images that come to mind when we think of religious life? What comes to our consciousness as we think about it? And as I've been reflecting, this is the image that comes to mind to a lot of my sisters. Now, that only happens to the west of the Mississippi, certainly not here. And it's, it's always about how there's fewer of us and how things are changing. So my question is, how do we focus on what's still there? Not what has been, but what's still there. And I ran into this quote in the Spanish magazine the Claretians published, and it says, in religious life, we have been beating ourselves too much. Many times we have told each other what we do not have, who we are not, all the things we cannot do, but the time has come for us to tell each other over and over again what we are, what we can, what we know, what we are capable of. And so I think there is a biblical story that goes with it. And when I pray with the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, that's what Jesus did. He said, they told him we only have 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and all he said was, bring that to me. Go find what you have, not what you don't have, not who you are no longer, but what you have. So I tell the sisters, maybe we don't recharge to 100%. The battery life and some of our devices. But it still has a charge. So what is ours to do at this time? With that charge, with what we have, with the loaves and fishes that we still have before us. So I'm asking myself, why are we still using words like aging and diminishment and completion and transition instead of using words like, and this is interesting for me. I'm 50 this year. It's a big deal, So I thought of this image. There I am, Now, given a normal life expectancy, maybe I'll live another 20, 35 years, and I don't want to be talking about diminishment and completion for another 20 years. And the thing is, we've been saying that for more than 10 or 15 years. Ever since I entered the convent, all we talk about is numbers. So how long is it going to take us? And so instead of these words, how come we're not talking about leaven and potential and transformation? So the next image that came to mind as I'm reflecting on what our role is at the present is, why are we driving looking back? We did awesome things. We're grateful. We've got books about it, and we even did a series, but I don't think that's what God is calling us to do. So how do we start looking ahead? How do we start looking ahead? What is it in our church, in our life, in all of our communities, in this life form, which is religious life, that we need to start doing differently? So I'm going to share a little clip. My sisters don't like cartoons. They're very formal people. And now, since we're in the East Coast, you probably only read and never watch television, which is fine. That's the stereotype we have. However, I showed my sisters this clip, and it's from the movie WALL-E. Have you seen WALL-E? Well, there's people that haven't seen. Well, you have to go see it. That's for homework. So I'll tell you a brief part of the story. So WALL-E is a little robot that's left on planet Earth. And planet Earth is a big pile of trash. And he's a trash compacting robot. Okay, and all the humans are floating in space because they couldn't stay on planet Earth because it was not sustainable anymore. But they sent probes to check if life is possible on Earth. So they sent Evie. It's a very romantic movie. And Evie has a directive. And Evie's directive is to find life. To find life. Note, in the trash, but to find life. So I want us to watch a little clip, because some of you may not listen to me and will not go see the movie, so here it is. That's Evie. Notice how she is scanning for life. That's all the trash on planet Earth. She can't find any life. And then later runs into WALL-E. So the directive kicks in. Sorry, you can't watch the whole thing tonight. We just have limited time. But the lesson for all of us is, where do we find what is alive? What we can do, where the energy is, where the life is. And the book of Deuteronomy is very clear. It calls us to choose life. To choose life. And it's not the life of what has been, but like Evie in WALL-E, we're supposed to notice what is emerging. That is the role of conscience, to notice, to take heed of what is happening in the present. And so much is happening in religious life that if we keep lamenting who we are no longer, we could just miss it. We could miss it as a church, as religious communities, even as an American society. So I really strongly believe that we need to be horizon seekers. We need to be conscious. In conscience, we are required to scout the horizon. We need to be pioneers of the future once again. With this little energy that we have, with these old ladies that we have, with who we are, not with who we are not. And religious life has a serious task of discernment of the future. So when I was thinking about horizon and how do we develop horizon consciousness, I went to look for some pictures. And the typical thing, you look for them in the internet. But I realized I had them on my phone. On my phone. So as I look for pictures, I began to wonder, wow, look at all the pictures I've taken of the horizon. This is the Texas sky, for those of you that never get down yonder. This is Lake Titicaca. This is Seattle. Medellin. That's all I do. I don't take any people in the pictures. I just take whatever's in the distance. And this is our Texas Hill Country. But we need to start looking out into what's a little beyond what we can see. We need to start imagining what is possible before it becomes possible. So if we took a real loving look at where we are and what we can, and then started to turn our mind sight to the future where God is calling us to go, not in the lamentations of the past, but to the future, we would really need to take a conscientious look at the present. What is happening now that has those seeds of the future that God is calling us to? What is happening now? And last year, and I have a disclaimer, important disclaimer, I am the president-elect of LCWR, but I am not here speaking on behalf of LCWR. However, I will have some commercials. Okay? So last year, Sister Pat Farrell used this image in her keynote address. She talked about the fog. And it really impacted me, because have you ever driven in the fog? Do you get fog in Boston? Yes. You do? What happens when you're driving in the fog? What happens if you have a chatterbox person with you in the car? What do you tell them? And how do you hold on to the steering wheel? Very tight, and you turn the radio down, you're very focused, you're very attentive, you're really there. You can't drive in the fog and do like multitasking. You're very intense. So that's the image that came into my mind when Pat Farrell said that we're having this fog time. And religious life has spent many years in the fog. Many years. We've been numerically obsessed. I can't tell you how tired I am of going places and I get asked, well, how many sisters in your congregation? Or do you have any novices? Right? Isn't that like so if we have like many sisters, then like we all win or something? What's the point of numbers? We have been vocationally challenged. It's true we didn't have large numbers of entrants. We couldn't have sociologically, but we still worried about it. And then I wonder, why did the Vatican Council renewal that older sisters than me in religious life were so excited about it? How come it turned into a dark night of the soul? Why did we go into this fog? But it's true that that's where we are. And this is what Pat Farrell said last year. This is our moment. We need to be conscious of our moment, otherwise we're going to miss the call. The world around us teeters on the edge of both peril and promise, breakdown and breakthrough, tussle with each other. And this is what she said last year: the path forward is hidden in fog. It is your time to lead, and to do so you must learn to be led and to listen deeply. Together we will discover personal and communal processes for deep prayer and dialogue. We will be given what we need to tend the soul of our communities by nurturing contemplative spaciousness. We are in this fog, but we also have what we need. So we just need to be aware and conscious of it. So here's the image of where I think religious life is right now. Okay, notice we've let go of the past because we didn't have a choice. Some of us are still trying to hold on dearly, but we've let go, and we still haven't grabbed the future. We're still up in the air. But you can't do that unless you have a profound faith. that God will catch us. And if we're not women of faith, then what are we doing? So this is a time when we really need to go deeply into faith. Now, we cannot ignore the fact that we've had a concerned church. Now, that is a letter. The letter up there is the decree that Rome put out announcing the apostolic visitation of women religious in the United States. You probably all read it and remember that there's a line there that says that the apostolic visitation was done in order to look into the quality of the life of women religious in the United States. Now, my Mexican sisters were not surprised. But I don't think Rome, now that as we've prayed about it and shared about it, we see it as a blessing. We've all learned that it was a blessing. We've also learned that there was a genuine concern on behalf of the church because of our numbers, because we weren't getting vocations. I still remember the visitors that came to San Antonio. We got one of those special visits for a whole week, when all the sisters lined up and they had to greet everybody, and we needed to provide a paper shredder and everything. And there was a list of things you needed to do. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the phone, the chairs, the thing, the list. And one of the visitors asked us, how come you sponsor a college and you sponsor a high school and you don't have vocations in the United States? Those questions burn. They do. We just have to own them. And I think we need to recognize that there was a genuine concern of the church for our communities. They expressed it this way. Maybe we'd have chosen a different one. But in the end, I think it did happen. They said they wanted to look into the quality of life, to learn more about the varied and unique ways in which women religious contribute to the wealth of the church, to assist the church to strengthen, enhance, and support the growth of the more than 400 congregations. So, in a way, the concern was there. It was the same concern we have. It was expressed in a way that was different. Then, of course, we had the experience of the doctrinal assessment. And I just want to put up a statement. I thought the way we handled the doctrinal assessment as a conference is a way to move into the future. We've learned something. We learned something in this process, and it's a learning that we need to share with the rest of the church. And given today's reality, we need to share it with this country. There is a way forward through impasse. And this is the statement that LCWR put out. The first part, we do not recognize ourselves in the doctrinal assessment of the conference and realize that despite our attempts to clarify misperceptions, they have led to deeper misunderstandings. Yet, LCWR was heartened by the attempt of both CDF and LCWR to find a way through that honors the integrity and mission of both offices. In the same statement, they said, passion for all the church can be deepens our commitment to stay at the table and talk through differences. We want to be part of the universal church rooted in the gospel, a church that hears the cry of the poor. And I have been a member of LCWR for both events, not an officer of the conference, not on the board. And I remember the first time we were at that assembly in Los Angeles, and of course we have the sisters that are used to marching for all kinds of causes, and some of them, that's what they wanted to do, go march. And then we had the sisters, all the diversity. And yet we were able to stay at the table and have the conversation. We were able to walk through it. And I can tell you now, I have reason to believe that even the Church Universal has benefited from this process. It could have been so different. We could have experienced the fog, we could have experienced the questions, and we could have responded in a way that was not helpful. So what are we learning about the present? And that resulted in an incredible moment. Remember St. Louis LCWR Assembly, and some of you know about it, but when we came, there were hundreds, thousands of people outside with signs. It was a powerful statement to religious life in the United States. When I hear stories about the number of letters that came in support of the conference, when I even hear numbers in terms of donations that came to religious life, we realize we learned something about ourselves and about how you deal with conflict. And so it had a happy ending. That's the picture of the happy ending. No, if it ends well, it's all well. So what did we learn? What did we learn? And these are the cards that the conference has produced. And that's the commercial. Please get some. As part of the contemplative process, we've learned something new is beginning to emerge. We've learned something. God is doing something with us. And something not just for our communities, but for the church at large. I have been impressed as I go through Latin America, and even when I was at UISG last year in Rome, how much the rest of the church appreciates the way we handled this process. So what did we learn? This is the contemplative process we're currently engaging in. And this is what we say. LCWR is engaging its members in a contemplative process designed to create a national conversation among all women religious about the critical questions on the horizon for religious life. And then it says to enable greater contemplative engagement, to strengthen and shape the mission, to strengthen the solidarity. So both events made us realize that we're together, that there's a higher calling, the charism of religious life that we should all commit to, not just our charisms, our particular charisms, but to the life form itself. And we've been saying it in different ways, the future that is there for God, that we need to be still and hear the small voice that will bring us to the edge. And I like this particular card. We're saying we are called to act and be as one in moving toward the emerging future to which God calls us. So I couldn't help it, and I thought of the Little Prince. As for the future, your task is not to foresee it, but to enable it. And that is why I believe that religious life, especially in the United States, because it's a very special kind of religious life in the United States, has a very important mission to do for the future at so many levels. So what can religious life contribute? Briefly, first, of course, this gift of contemplation. This gift of contemplation. The fact that we now know that in order to enter into a conversation, you need silence, you need deep listening, you need to build bridges, you need to be able to do things in such a way that you want to move to a resolution, to unity, even in the middle of difference and diversity. But we've also learned that the mission is God's job. Like Anthony Giddens says, God's job description is mission. And when I was going through some of what Anthony Giddens has to say about mission, I remember he came to San Antonio one day and he said that mission is like God breathing. Breathes out, exhales and inhales. And I think religious life is caught in the breath of God. God has exhaled us, and we went to Peru, and we went to the far corners of the African continent, and we went to Southeast Asia, and right now, God is inhaling us. We are experiencing this great inhaling, and we need to trust that God will exhale again. That's the transformation we're being called to. So this is a time of real faith, not just being optimistic or positive thinking, This is faith, the kind of faith that trusts that there is life after death. What Ron Rolheiser says, it's time for us to also give up our death because we believe in the God of life. So there's a way to die that brings forth life. So even that is a task for us. I also think we're going to be small. We're not going to become extinct like that chancellor said, but we are going to be a lot smaller. And we need to move beyond the numbers game. The numbers game is not ecological. That's not, think of Laudato Si. We need sustainability. Bigger, louder, is not necessarily what is required. We need to believe we are enough. We are enough. We are what God requires now. In the 1950s and 60s, there was a different need. I entered the convent after everything happened. I missed everything. Everything. I missed it, when we went on a picnic, and I missed when there were 40 novices, and I missed when we just, there were like 30 sisters at the college, and Tere, you missed it. I even missed something called Mother's Table. That, I'm sorry. Apparently the sisters did little gifts for Mother General, right? Now they don't even remember my birthday. But for 22 years, I have been hearing what I missed. And one day I finally said, there must be a reason. We have to be enough. When do we believe that who we are now is enough? It's enough. Not because, it's like, oh my God, there's so few of us. And then I look at our founding stories. There were just 3 and 2 died. And yet here we are. And you're thinking that 100 is too little. We are enough. Even Pope Francis agrees with me. How about that? Just last week, that's the image. I was like, come on, please, en salida, get out there. Stop whining about what you're not. Here's what he told a group of sisters last week. The majority of our founding fathers and mothers never thought they'd be a multitude. And then he used the image of the pizza. He said, he said, they were moved by the Holy Spirit to respond to the real needs of their time, to build the church like leaven in the dough, like salt and light. Just think, he says, a dish with too much salt would be inedible. And I've never seen a pizza maker who took half a kilo of yeast and 100 grams of flour. So Christians must be concerned with being leaven in society more than with being a majority. We have to move beyond numbers. And it's not that numbers don't matter. Yes, they matter. But we need to be hospitable to everybody. We need to welcome everyone. I don't agree with being a few select people, but I think that we do need to understand that the numbers are not as important as our commitment to being salt and leaven. The other thing we can offer at the present time is networking. One of the gifts of diminishment is that we need each other. We need each other. It's beautiful. Finally, the medieval system is collapsing. The sisters of the whatever hospital are better than the ones over there in the high school. And we were so proud of our charisms that were so special and particular and better than the other one, of course. We are in a time when we need to be networked, to partner. We co-sponsor, we create federations, we're creating unions. And this is what Nancy Sylvester has to say. Facing breakdown or breakthrough, we people of faith are challenged to put on the mind of Christ, to transform our own consciousness so that we can take a long, loving look at the real and see our connectedness, our unity, so that we can imagine new ways of responding to the crises of our time. We can no longer do it on our own. We need to collaborate. We need to partner with lay people. We need to partner with people of other faiths. We need to create that mission that God is breathing us out in, but not the way we used to in the past. So there is a blessing in what we are experiencing in terms of number. And so we also need to honor that we have a net of influence. And this is an image Barbara Fiend uses, using Palmer Parker's model of a community of learning. The charism is in the center, and the rest of us are charism carriers. But that generates a net that keeps spreading. We don't even know how much influence we have. We learned it during the visitation and the mandate. We realized we had touched more people than we had ever imagined. And so we need to trust the energy of God's charism among us. So what are the tasks? I think I heard Sister Mariam Ambrosio from Brazil speak at the UISG last May. And she said, religious life is the power of a how. The power of a how. And she used the image of weaving. And this is what she had to say. Let us renew our awareness that we are not special for what we do, nor for why we do it. All Christians are predestined for this answer. Religious life is the power of a how. Let us emphasize the word how. It is our way of doing. It is the manner we follow Jesus that gives meaning to our being women religious of apostolic life. We are the power of the how for the church. And she said there is a difference between a weaver, a hand-woven garment, than something produced in some factory. And she said, the woman with magic hands using the loom, mixing threads and colors. And I love how it ends. The weaver works with a smile on her face or while singing a love song. It is the how. We may only do a little because there aren't that many. Or maybe we can only spend a few hours someplace because we can't stay all day. But that little that we do needs to be infused with that song. And then it will make a difference. Then it will make a difference. The other gift that we have is that whether we like to or not, we're letting go. Some people are saying that we're entering the great deinstitutionalization of religious life. And that may be a gift as well. Because when we're uninstalled, we are going to be free to do other things. And those ministries and those sponsored hospitals and schools and soup kitchens, we have it all. We have amazing lay people that love the mission doing them. And they need us just to be leaven and salt. The next thing is that we are going to be able to move. Migration is a sign of our times. And it is time for us to move to other parts of the city, to move to other parts of the country, to move. And we have lessons to learn from nomadic tribes that have always moved. Tribes like the Roma in Europe, or even the nomads in the American continent. They don't need a place, they need a community. That's their source of identity. We also need to really lean into our diversity. We need to lean into our diversity. Jose Cristo Rey Paredes, he's a Spanish theologian of religious life. He uses the word, and I hope I can pronounce it, autopoiesis. Any biologists in the room? That's good. Okay. Anyway, he says religious institutes are like living systems. Our environment offers its energy and gifts to religious institutes and revitalizes them. He says the mutual pollination and planting facilitates this autopoiesis, which is this self-reproduction. But then he utters a warning. Institutes with greater biodiversity will have the possibility of revitalization. So using the concept of biology and applying it to society, a lot of people are saying what we know. If we're not open to the other, if we're not welcoming and hospitable, if we do not learn how to bring diversity into religious life, we do not have a chance. So religious institutes that learn to dance with diversity, that learn to do that, will probably be the institutes that will bring us to the future. So how do we welcome the other among us? The diversity is a big chance. So finally, I think religious life in the United States needs to build bridges. What can it offer? It can offer bridge building. And I want to show you some pictures. I went to Berkeley in 1989. Any of you remember that 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake? So you're all back here in the East Coast. You don't know what's going on out there. That's okay. But there was this big earthquake in San Francisco. And that's the Bay Bridge when I got there. Okay? And then in September, 1 month into my first year of my MA, the earthquake struck the bridge. And we had no bridge. This is 1989. But then, you know, the bridge was impassable. It was shut down. It was very difficult to move around the city. It was very difficult to connect. Think about past and future. And then they started building one. The project started in 1990. And for almost 20 years, there were 2 bridges, the old one and the new one being built. I finally went back to the Bay Area a couple of years ago, and then I saw the beautiful new bridge. We are at a threshold, at this horizon moment, where we need to build a new bridge, more flexible and more capable of bringing the past and our legacy, our tradition, our heritage into the future. So I want to conclude with the idea that there is a dance to conscience. There is a dance to conscience. We can only get to the horizon if we do it with a dance. And this is an image I like of Pope Francis. I think that's what he's telling the whole church. There's just one thing, everybody. There's just one thing, and it has to do with Jesus. So to get to that horizon, to get to that consciousness, we need to be convinced from personal experience that it is not the same thing to have known Jesus as not to have known him. We need to be convinced about that. And that is something that religious life can gift the entire church with. And for those of you that don't know him, this is Simon Pedro Arnold. He is a Benedictine, a Belgian Benedictine who's Peruvian. He lives in Peru, and he just published this book called La Era de la Mariposa, the time of the butterfly. And he uses the image of the dance, And he says, life is a most beautiful and demanding school of dance. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to grasp. We will only be saved by the art of free movement. We need to move our hips around the living spinal column of the church, the cross of Jesus Christ. How do we return to a Christ always in movement, the one who walks on the dusty roads of Galilee near the raging waters of the lake and dances in the wedding at Cana? In a certain way, we must be initiated into a choreographic discipleship where we are not about imitating or catching up with Christ in an effort of will, but we grow into his rhythm and compass. So it is a dance. It's a dance, and we can dance. I have older sisters that love to dance. There's a joy in the dance. I even say that this is the best explanation of missionary discipleship I have read. This really explains the idea that Francis has in the term of missionary discipleship. So we are called to encuentro, and I'm using the word encuentro in Spanish. Encounter sounds like the movie, Close Encounter of the Third Kind. You know, it's like you encounter a wall maybe, but encuentro is a get-together. You know, our Latin American sisters, when they get together, they say, Tere, tuvimos un encuentro. They never say, tuvimos una junta. We had a meeting. And religious in the U.S. are always going to meetings. I wonder if they have experiences of encuentro. See, of conversation and how are you and all these things that you do when you have a gathering. And Francis wants us to go to that encuentro. We have an appointment with that encuentro. We've been invited to that party. That's what he says in Evangelii Gaudium. Becoming a people demands something more. It is an ongoing process in which every new generation must take part, a slow and arduous effort, calling for a desire for integration and the willingness to achieve this through the growth of a peaceful and multifaceted culture of encounter. So we've been called to the future, but this future is an encounter. It's an encounter with the other who is God, an encounter with others, an encounter with the other within us. And we can only get there dancing. And that is why encuentro, to know if you had a good encuentro, you have to have a fiesta. You have to have a fiesta. And so I think religious life gets the front row seat in the church as we go into this fiesta, which is the reign of God. I believe we have all we need. We have the loaves and fishes that are required. We just need to take notice. We need to grow in our awareness and our consciousness of what is there already. And so I want to conclude by sharing with you that if there is an encuentro, there's a fiesta. So there's no one that can do that better than Celia Cruz. So I am going to ask her to close this talk. Here she goes.
Isidro, cuando usted me empezó a tocar el número, yo iba a practicar mi inglés y no pude hacerlo, así que ahora le voy a decir, ladies and gentlemen, para los que no me entienden. It is a great pleasure to be here with you tonight. Thank you for coming. Remember that my English is not very good looking, but I am very glad to say that. Enjoy the show, okay?
And this is your homework. This song. Do you know the words? So I will translate. Anyone who thinks that life is unequal, you need to know it's not that way. Life is beautiful. We need to live it. Anyone who thinks they're alone, that's not the way. No one's ever alone. There's always someone there. We shouldn't cry because life is a carnival and we need to live singing. That's Celia's Cruz message. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to share with you this evening.